This is the VOA Special English Agriculture Report. Some people say broccoli looks like small trees and cauliflower like gathered clouds. They think broccoli is only green and cauliflower is only white. But these nutritious vegetables also come in more colorful versions. One kind of cauliflower, for example, is orange, and broccoli can be purple. Broccoli and cauliflower are among the most nutritious vegetables. They are high in vitamin C, fiber, and other nutrients. And they contain substances that are believed to fight cancer. They belong to the cabbage or cole family. Other members include cabbage, collards, Brussels sprouts, kale, and kohlrabi. Agriculture experts at the Ohio State University Extension say broccoli and cauliflower grow best in cooler climates. They suggest planting them where the average daily temperature is between 18 and 26 degrees Celsius. Both crops grow best in sunshine and fertile, moist soil, but water should not be standing on the soil. Using mulch helps keep the ground moist and cool. Mulch also helps feed the soil and controls weeds. Broccoli and cauliflower can grow outdoors from seed or as small plants. Vincent Fritz of the University of Minnesota Extension suggests that results are far better with small plants. He says the vegetables should be planted so that they can be harvested before the hottest weather. Experts differ about how to space the plantings in the ground. One suggestion is to plant them in rows about 3/4 of a meter to nearly 1 meter apart. Then place broccoli plants about 20 to 30 centimeters apart in the rows. Set cauliflower plants 38 to about 46 centimeters from each other in the rows. As it grows, a cauliflower plant will start to form a head. The head contains flower buds that are tightly closed and at least 2 leaves wrapping it. Gather and tie the leaves over the head and do not wait for the buds to separate before harvesting. Harvest the center flower bud cluster of broccoli when it reaches the size you want and while the buds are still tightly together. Cut the main stem about 12 to 15 centimeters below the head. You can eat broccoli and cauliflower raw, or you can steam them in a small amount of water or stir-fry them in a small amount of oil. The less time they cook, the better. And that's the VOA Special English Agriculture Report.
This is the VOA Special English Agriculture Report. Some pirates catch fish instead of ships. The problem is known as illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing. Such fishing harms the productivity of fisheries and hurts developing countries especially. The fish pirates can easily land in ports that are not well controlled. Then they sell their catch at prices too low for the local fishing industry to compete. The catch may enter international markets, yet rob communities of needed food and raise the risk of fishery collapse. In November, the Governing Conference of the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization approved a new treaty. The agreement, once it takes effect, will be the first under international law to target this problem. It has a long name, the Agreement on Port-State Measures to Prevent, Deter, and Eliminate Illegal, Unreported, and Unregulated Fishing. The FAO says that by signing the treaty, governments promise to take steps to guard their ports against ships involved in such fishing. The behavior of a fishing boat is mainly the responsibility of the nation whose flag it flies. The new treaty is directed at countries where fishing ships enter port. The aim is to get the countries to identify, report, and deny entry to offending vessels. To land, foreign fishing ships will have to request permission from ports that are able to inspect them. And before they arrive, they will have to send information on their activities and the fish they are carrying. If a ship is denied entry, other ports will be told, and the nation whose flag it is sailing under must take action. The agreement will take effect once 25 countries have ratified it into law after signing it. 11 members of the Food and Agriculture Organization immediately signed the treaty. They included Angola, Brazil, Chile, the European Union, Indonesia, and Iceland. The others were Norway, Samoa, Sierra Leone, the United States, and Uruguay. Activists with the Pew Environment Group say countries should use the measures even before the treaty takes effect. The group notes that a past fishing treaty took almost 10 years to come into force. But the director of international law programs at Southern Illinois University is more hopeful. Cindy Buys thinks the treaty might take effect in only about a year. But she points out that the success of the treaty depends on the ability of nations to enforce it. And that's the VOA Special English Agriculture Report.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Agriculture Report in Special English. Thanksgiving Day is a national holiday that Americans celebrate on the fourth Thursday in November. This autumn festival is traditionally celebrated with family and friends over a big meal that takes hours to prepare. The meal usually includes turkey, served along with dishes like cranberry sauce, sweet potatoes, green beans, and pumpkin pie. The turkey is usually seasoned and roasted in an oven, but some people fry the bird in oil or cook it on a grill. The National Turkey Federation estimates that Americans ate 46 million of the birds during last year's holiday. About 2/3 of the turkeys raised in America came from 6 states: Minnesota, North Carolina, Arkansas, Missouri, Virginia, and Indiana. Turkey is eaten all year, not just during the holidays. Americans have been consuming an increasing amount of turkey, although chicken, beef, and pork are still more popular. One industry official says 2012 will not be as profitable for turkey farmers as past years have been. Feed costs are up, while turkey prices are about the same. The Pilgrims' Feast in 1621 is often considered the nation's first Thanksgiving. The Pilgrims were early settlers of the Plymouth colony in what is now Massachusetts. They held a 3-day feast to celebrate a good harvest. During the Civil War, President Abraham Lincoln declared the last Thursday of November a national day of Thanksgiving. As the Great Depression was ending, President Franklin Roosevelt established the holiday on the month's 4th Thursday. He did not want to shorten the Christmas holiday shopping season in years when November has a 5th Thursday, as it did this year. For VOA Learning English, I'm Laurel Bowman.
I'm Alex Villarreal with the VOA Special English Agriculture Report. For American soldiers, the move from the military to civilian life is not always easy. Military veterans have a 35% unemployment rate. This is more than 3 times the national average. And an estimated 100,000 veterans are homeless. The federal government and private organizations offer programs to help veterans. One private program is called Archie's Acres. It is on a 2-hectare farm in Southern California. Marine Sergeant Colin Archiplay returned to the United States after serving 3 tours of duty in Iraq. He and his wife Karen bought a farm in Southern California. They produce organic hydroponic crops. They grow their tomatoes, lettuce, and basil in pure water instead of in soil. Karen Archiplay says her husband wanted to share the peace he found on his farm with other veterans. So the Archiplays worked with the local Veterans Administration office. They wanted to help returning troops translate their leadership skills to private business. Archie's Acres is helping combat veterans become agricultural business owners. Colin Archiplay is expanding his program to teach business skills. And he plans to include active troops who are ending their service. He notes that many veterans suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. This is made worse when they cannot find jobs and become homeless. He believes that the rate of PTSD would drop if soldiers could spend their last few months in the military learning skills so they could get jobs. In his new 6-week program, Colin Archiplay will teach agricultural skills from planting to harvest. Karen Archiplay will teach marketing. Educators from the Small Business Administration are also involved. They will teach classes on how to operate a business. Colin Archiplay does not expect veterans completing the program will have any problems finding work. He hopes to expand his program to serve veterans on the East Coast. He is also planning to make his 6-week course available online, so anyone in the military, anywhere, can take the classes. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal. You can find scripts, podcasts, and MP3s on our website, voaspecialenglish.com. And you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and iTunes at VOA Learning English. This is the VOA Special English Agriculture Report. In 1621, a big celebration took place at Plymouth Colony in what is now the state of Massachusetts. European settlers known as the Pilgrims were celebrating their autumn harvest after a winter of struggle. Other colonists held earlier ceremonies of thanks. But the Pilgrims' three-day feast is often called the nation's first Thanksgiving. President Abraham Lincoln declared a national holiday in 1863 during the Civil War. Today, families and friends gather on the fourth Thursday in November. And thanks to the United States Census Bureau, here are some facts about where their Thanksgiving meal comes from. The main dish is traditionally a turkey. About 2/3 of the nation's turkeys are produced in Minnesota and 5 other states. Producers are expected to raise 248 million birds this year, 2% more than last year. Popular side dishes include cranberries and sweet potatoes. Last year, North Carolina grew more sweet potatoes than any other state. Wisconsin is expected to be the top cranberry producer this year. People often finish the meal with pumpkin pie. Last year, Illinois grew the most pumpkins. California, New York, and Ohio were also major pumpkin producers. Thanksgiving is a big event, but buying a traditional holiday meal can be a struggle for the poor. So charity groups often hold food drives. In Denver, Colorado, volunteers were collecting donated items to fill 1,500 Thanksgiving baskets. Rodney Cunningham has been helping the group Volunteers of America for 3 years. He says this year the demand was greater than ever. One of the reasons why it's really important is because the economy is pretty bad and a lot of people have a need for extra food. They don't have any food at all. Jim White, Community Affairs Director at Volunteers of America, says people donated a lot of food. These individuals donated over 148 tons of food, but it takes a huge amount of food, as you can imagine, to do 1,500 food baskets complete with stuffing and cranberries and pumpkin and fresh produce, and then they are all topped off with a 15-pound frozen turkey. Mr. White says volunteers come from all over Denver to help. Thanksgiving should be viewed as a verb, not a noun. And what better way to give thanks than to help somebody out that you know is struggling right now? For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal. From VOA Learning English, this is the Agriculture Report in Special English. Severe food shortages in the Sahel area of Africa have affected 18 million people in 9 countries this year. This was the 3rd severe food crisis in 4 years in the area south of the Sahara Desert. How can the Sahel break its cycle of food insecurity? Aid workers are asking that question as this year's emergency eases. David Gressley is the United Nations Regional Humanitarian Coordinator for the Sahel. He says during a crisis, families eat just 1 or 2 meals a day. They take their children out of school. and they sell their animals and go into debt. These actions put them at greater risk in a future crisis. In fact, many of the families affected by this year's food crisis have yet to recover from earlier ones. Aid agencies sent food and emergency assistance. They supplied farmers with drought-resistant seeds, improved fertilizers, and medicines for livestock. Aid groups also worked to improve irrigation systems and grain storage. These measures dealt with short-term needs, but David Gressley says the work should not stop when the crisis eases. He says there is a need for targeted programs for these 18 million people. He says the programs should find ways to avoid crises so that people do not put their futures at risk just to survive. Aid groups say they are working to build the resilience of communities, to make them stronger during a crisis. David Gressley says this means taking steps like reducing child malnutrition and changing cultural practices that may be harmful. Building the resilience of poor people also means investing in food reserves and social protections like health care. Aid groups say prevention costs less than treatment. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Villarreal. From VOA Learning English, this is the Agriculture Report in Special English. The humanitarian situation in Somalia has improved. United Nations officials say the improvement is the result of new methods of aid delivery, more rainfall, and success against militants. Luca Alanovi is head of the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization for Somalia. He says the situation has changed in a sustainable way. But he says those gains are at risk if the international community fails to support the Somali people. He warns of a possible return to conditions like those in 2011. That was when a famine emergency was declared in parts of Somalia. Many people died. Many others walked for weeks to reach areas with food and water. Luca Alanovi says the FAO used cash-based interventions to help during the famine and the season after it. He says the aid effort urged Somalis to stay where they were. Earlier interventions, he says, were based more on simply providing food, shelter, and other basic needs. 2012 was a good year for rainfall in Somalia. 2 major rivers cross the country, so irrigation can be used in a lot of areas. Luca Alanovi says continued investment in irrigation could increase agricultural production to meet the needs of more than half of Somalia. Another issue affecting the humanitarian situation has been the success against the militant group Al-Shabaab. Forces from the African Union, known as AMISOM, along with those from the Somali government and Kenya, have driven militants from many areas. But Luca Alanovi says many rural areas remain under Al-Shabaab's control, and the military operation continues. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Villarreal. This is the VOA Special English Agriculture Report. Trees and plants are called ornamentals if their main job is to add beauty and interest to a garden. Dogwood trees, for example, are a popular ornamental in parts of the United States. They produce white or pink blooms in the spring. Cherry and plum trees can also add beauty to landscaping, even if they never produce fruit. Ornamental trees and bushes or shrubs can serve other useful purposes besides just looking good. Some also smell good and can be used to make scented oils, for example, lavender and lilac. Ornamentals can be used to mark the border of a property or to provide privacy from neighbors. They can be used to hide trash cans and storage sheds. Most ornamentals have the same needs as other plants: water, mulch, pruning for shape, and inspection for pests. But Master Gardener Bob Orazi says most of them take care of themselves after the first 6 months. Bob Orazi is a horticultural advisor in Howard County, Maryland. Years of experience have shown him that people often decide to plant an ornamental bush when they see one in bloom. They might see the yellow blooms on a forsythia bush, one of the first signs of spring, and decide to plant one. But he says most ornamentals are better to plant just before their leaves open. Some ornamentals and other plants are sold with their roots in a ball of dirt held together with burlap. But David Robson of the University of Illinois Extension says more and more plants are grown in containers. They are easier to ship that way. However, the roots may become encircled by growing around and around in the pot. So his advice is to pull the plant out of the container, then cut the bottom half of the root ball into 4 parts. This process is known as butterflying. The bottom of the root ball will look something like the spread open wings of a butterfly. David Robson says planting the root ball this way will produce much faster growth on a tree or shrub. But you have to remember that by butterflying, you are cutting down the overall height of the root ball. So his suggestion is to butterfly it first, then measure how tall the root ball is before digging the hole. Make sure not to dig too deep. The plant should not be sitting below the soil line. Another suggestion is not to let shrubs grow taller than 4.5 meters. If some shrubs get too tall, he says, they start losing their ability to produce good flowers. In that case, your ornamental plant might not be so ornamental. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal. For more gardening advice, go to voaspecialenglish.com. This is the VOA Special English Agriculture Report. Foreign investment in African land is growing. Countries like China, Saudi Arabia, and South Korea are leasing or buying millions of hectares to grow food for their people. Research shows that many large land deals lack protections for small farmers. Contracts may guarantee leases for up to 99 years, leaving local people without land for generations. Better practices balance exports with local food needs and give farmers ways to enforce promises by investors. They also make clear what kinds of jobs and how many jobs will be created. Smallholders can gain influence if they form cooperatives or unions, or have the support of non-governmental organizations. There are different business models for cooperation between investors and local farmers. Lorenzo Cotula is a senior researcher at the International Institute for Environment and Development in London. One popular method, says Mr. Cotula, is contract farming. Contract farming has been around for a very long time, and which essentially involves a company providing credit, inputs like seeds and fertilizers and training and all that, and then buying produce from the farmers at a fixed price when harvest time comes. Companies usually deduct the cost of the inputs from the final purchase price. He says contract farming represents up to 60% of tea and sugar farming in Kenya and 100% of cotton farming in Mozambique. Contract farming may give farmers more access to markets for high-value crops. But Mr. Cotula found that contracts often go to wealthier farmers. Poorer farmers often work as labor on the contracted farms. The price that companies pay to farmers may be low, and companies might not honor purchase agreements when market conditions change. Also, growers may go into debt when the company deducts payments for inputs from the final purchase price. Another business model is a joint venture. Lorenzo Cotula says an equity stake or share of ownership in a business can give communities a voice in decision-making. It can also provide income in the form of dividend payments. But a practice called transfer pricing can make those dividends disappear. Prices are inflated or deflated in deals with companies linked to the partner in the joint venture. This practice reduces profits for the joint venture company and dividends for smallholder partners. As a solution, contracts may require fair market prices for sales to partners. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal. From VOA Learning English, this is the Agriculture Report. Kenyan farmers say a British ban on the plant known as cot will seriously affect their businesses and economy. Exports of cot, also called miraa, are worth a lot of money to Kenya. The farmers have exported the plant mainly to European countries and Somalia. Cot is grown in the colder climates of central Kenya. For years, people have been using it as a drug. Chewing the leaves of the plant can increase the heartbeat and make a person feel more awake. Some Kenyan politicians and cot traders have called on the government to open talks with British officials to convince them to cancel the ban on cot. They say ending the ban would save Kenya's cot industry from collapse. Kipkorir Menjo is the director of the Kenya Farmers Association. He says the ban will affect tens of thousands of people. In July, British Home Secretary Theresa May banned the leafy stimulant. She warned that traders could use Britain to move cot illegally to other European countries. Cot is already banned in most European countries, including France, Germany, and the Netherlands. Kenyan traders exported about 20 tons of khat to the Netherlands weekly before the ban. Another 36 tons a week was sent to Britain. Kip Career Menjo says khat farmers and traders need to speak up so that Britain can lift the ban. As the farmers and traders study the latest developments in Europe, another battle awaits them inside Kenya. The National Authority for the Campaign Against Alcohol and Drug Abuse is urging the government to list khat as an illegal drug. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Villarreal.